My mother grew up in a little town in El Salvador called Chalantinago. She would tell me and my sisters this story, and she swears it really happened. All of my aunts that grew up with her confirmed this story also. Supposedly, my mum's friend's brother woke up one night at around 2 a.m. in the morning. He was around 27, I believe. It was still dark out, but he had to take a piss. This town is poor, so his bathroom was outside. While he was taking a piss, a beautiful woman walked past him. He was a player and went after her. He tried talking to her, but she kept walking away. She eventually stopped and turned around. When she turned around, he was shocked to see that she had a face of a pig. He immediately started screaming. This woke his family and they went to his aid. They found him screaming, rolled up in a ball in the middle of the road. They took him to the hospital. He went crazy. Before he went fully crazy, he was able to tell his family what had happened. My mum's friend told her what had happened to her brother. All of the neighbors around saw him there. My mum said that the ghost creature is called the Lassi Guanaba. She has told me some other crazy stories that had happened to her when she was a kid, and my aunts and uncles have told me ones that have happened to them, so let me know if you want to hear them too. El Salvador used to be a very haunted place, according to my family that lived there. Kia ora, Tefano. Grim here, and as normal, this will be some amazingly terrifying tales that will help you fall asleep. These ones are all going to be based on true cryptid encounters. I am pleased to say that I am joined by one of my best friends in the horror community today. You all should know him. Intiskia Sleep. He'll be reading the next story, and then I will continue on reading the rest of mine. This here will also have about an hour of rain at the end, like my other ones. Well, please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
This was back in the late 90s, when myself and two of my friends were staying at their vacation home down on one of the local rivers. The house, think 3 small bedrooms, a sitting room/kitchen, and a small external bathroom, is on a privately owned island, not theirs, which is used for cattle grazing, and is about 3 to 4 square miles in area. It is accessible by only one dirt road, which takes all of about 30 minutes to travel down, as it bends and winds through dense cypress swamps that are full of alligators and marsh plains. Along the road, there is one other house, just as you get onto the island, which has long been abandoned. This old 2-story plantation-style home was supposedly abandoned when the owners, a married couple-child, suffered from a fatal accident, and they couldn't stand being there anymore. Aside from my friend's house, the cattle farmer's home, and one other vacation home, the abandoned property is the only other structure. Well, my friends and I were out on the dock doing some night fishing, trying to land a shark or something to throw on the grill, but we hadn't had much luck. The river was as smooth as glass, which was really unusual because of where the dock is. The current there is usually very strong, even during the tide shift. We sat and chatted, waiting for a bite, up until about 11 p.m. Then off to our right, towards the coast, we heard a loud tone, or wail, which sounded like a mix between a ship's horn and maybe a wolf howl or something similar. An important note, the island is nearly an hour by car from deep water access, and probably more from actual ocean, so the likelihood that the sound was a large ship is low. So anyway, we were startled by the sound, and even my friend, who had been spending his summers there since he was in diapers, had never heard the noise before and was bothered by it. So we decided to pack it in, since we weren't catching anything anyway and had nearly gotten all of our equipment back to the house when my second friend heard it. Coming from down the road, back towards the island access, was what sounded either like a cat meowing or a child crying. We all stood in silence listening and trying to figure out what it was and where it was coming from. After listening for about 5 minutes, we decided to hop back in the truck and drive down the road a ways, with the windows down, so we can try and find what was making that sound. What started out sounding like a cat was made clear as we got further up the road. That was not the case. We could clearly hear a child, and it sounded like it was saying, "Help me." We drove very slowly, calling out, and we'd wait a few minutes and hear "Help me" again, but always further up the road towards the swamps and the old abandoned house. We were seriously freaked out, because if there was a kid out there, why would they be going away from our calls and right into the swamp? We nearly made it all the way to the abandoned house when the sound just stopped. We waited for nearly an hour and never heard it again. We marked it up as nerves and headed back to the river house, assuming it had been an animal after all, and that we were probably just imagining it saying words. Well, after we'd gotten back inside and settled in for the night, we started hearing it again, but as time passed, it came closer to us. We went out and called out again, and the sound would come closer. This went on for hours. Well, we decided we would try one more time to see if there was a kid lost or something. Again, important to note, we are miles from the next nearest people, and the noise sounded like a child. Think 4-year-old. But once we got out in the truck again, the noise stopped. It was now nearly 3 in the morning, and we had been out in the sun fishing and swimming all day, so we were all tired. And after driving around for a bit, calling out again with no luck, we decided to give up. We get back inside again and get into our beds. Then we hear it, clear as a bell. "Help me," right outside the house. But it sounded so strange, like it was an echo, if that makes sense. Like it was close, but far away too. And like hell if any of us were brave enough to go commando and leave the house. But we went out onto the porch, which was screened in for bugs, and listened. As soon as we went out, it would stop. Go back into the beds. It would call out again, but in a different location outside the house. It circled the house, calling all night. We all slept in the living room, but to be honest, there wasn't a lot of sleeping happening. In the morning, we went out and looked for tracks around the house, as the foundation is basically sand. There wasn't a mark. No prints, animal or otherwise. And to the best of my knowledge, this never happened again to my friend or any other visitors. To this day, we don't know what we heard, but it's probably the most supernatural occurrence that I've ever experienced.
The Silver Bridge of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Galapagos, Ohio, collapsed on December 15th, 10 days before Christmas, killing 46. Many of the people on the bridge were coming back late from Christmas shopping when the bridge jolted and fell into the cold Ohio River. Christmas presents could be seen floating in the river, and headlights were still seen in the darkness of the bottom of the Ohio. The cause of the bridge collapse was to be cleavage fracture in the lower limb of the eye of the I-bar 330 at joint C13N of the North I-bar suspension chain in the Ohio side span. The Mothman, a 6 to 7 foot grey black flying humanoid with hypnotizing large red eyes who stalked the Appalachian town primarily from 1966 to 67, was reportedly seen by some witnesses before and during the tragedy on or near the bridge. Many believe that the Mothman was a harbinger of doom trying to warn Point Pleasant. Others believe that it caused the disaster itself. Marcella Burnett, who saw the Mothman in mid-November 1966 when visiting a friend's house with her family, told Jeff Whimsy, author and curator of the Mothman Museum, that her uncle Robert, who lived in an apartment in downtown Point Pleasant, overlooking the Ohio River, saw what she saw: a flying man that looked like a bird that flew under the bridge before the bridge fell. In Mothman Facts Behind the Legend by Donnie Sargent and Jeff Wormsley, when talking to one of the first Mothman witnesses, Linda Scarberry, Sargent says he received an email from the last tractor-trailer driver across the bridge before it fell, who said that he saw the Mothman fly around his truck before it vanished into the sky. Mary here was a well-respected reporter in Point Pleasant who wrote articles about the Mothman and was a close friend of John Keel, writer of the Mothman Prophecies. They teamed up to interview witnesses of the Mothman. On November 1967, she told Keel, "I had a terrible nightmare. There were lots of people drowning in the river, and Christmas packages were floating everywhere in the water. It's like something awful is going to happen." When Keel returned to Point Pleasant around Thanksgiving 1967, people in the area were having dreams and nightmares about a coming disaster. Virginia Thomas, another Mothman witness, had them about people dying in the water of the nearby Ohio River. Despite the popular belief, the Mothman is still reported in Point Pleasant area to this day. One recent encounter was from a postal driver in 2018 near Point Pleasant. The Mothman remains an ingrained part of Point Pleasant's history. Thousands of people each year flood the streets of Point Pleasant to indulge and celebrate all things Mothman. What I'm about to say will surely make me look crazy. When I was a child between 4 and 5 years old, I often saw a shadow at night. A shadow that was the same size as me and moaned while screaming. The scream was a mix of broken radio, angry cat, zombie. It was a low tone like that of an angry goat. It appeared when I pulled my head out of the blanket. Without pretext, his body was as dark as night. His face was terrifying. 2 gaping holes for his eyes and a large deep, endless mouth, a spike on top of his head. I was screaming every night until my dad picked me up to sleep in my parents' bed. The thing followed us, and my father stopped me from turning on the light. He told me, "You're brave. You don't need to turn on the light." We stayed in the dark and ended up falling asleep, hearing the thing scream. A few years passed. I was 16 and I finally saw him again. I told my father and he believed me. He told me that he had seen it. I had my doubts. I thought he just wanted to scare me, so I asked him to go to another room in the house and draw this creature, and that I'd do the same. We had the same drawing except for a few details. It scared me, but my father didn't know any more than I. I've heard of shadow people before, but it's not really similar. This thing has to be about my size when I was 5. Recently, he came to visit me when I was 21. Several times during my shock and anxiety attacks, I found an image that looked like it a while ago, but I can't find any results on Google. Today, only a few years have passed and I still have questions. My father died 7 years ago. Only I saw this thing. Do you know what it is? Have you seen anything similar? This was an experience that happened when I was a kid, probably around 8 or 10. I'm 22 now for reference. There was this park that in the summertime my dad would take me to. He would play basketball in the court and I would play in the section with the park equipment. One day I was on the swing set and this couple came up and started talking to me. There was a man and a woman with a black stroller. Thinking about it, I don't think I ever saw a baby in the stroller, although I do remember it always being facing away from me. This may have been a normal interaction and eventually normal multiple interactions, but something felt very off, or dreamlike is the best description when it came to these encounters. I was even able to pick up on that at my age at the time. The man in the couple was wearing blue jeans and a red and white plaid checkered shirt, but he looked odd. Like kind of clammy, pale, or a grey kind of tone. I also remember his eyes being very penetrating. The woman had on a dress and I think had medium length brown hair. I can't remember her face though, no matter how hard I try. Although she looked more normal from what I remember. The best way to describe the man's hair was to be kind of blonde, ashen and artificial looking. Kind of sticky. As if in a bowl cut and the use of excessive gel was used to spike it up. I can't remember exactly what we talked about, but I think it revolved around God and religion. And it was a very short interaction, probably about 10 minutes. The weirder part is I saw them later at a completely different park on a completely different date. It could have been weeks or months even, and they were in the exact same outfits with the exact same stroller. It looked like only 5 minutes had passed, but it was a completely different location at a completely different time. I can remember feeling apprehensive and off when I saw them again. Strangely, I can't remember if I talked to them or not a second time. And the last key to the story is that when I told my dad about seeing this couple multiple times as a kid, he said maybe they were angels. And I remember that intensely freaked me out for some reason. Now, there could be a perfectly rational explanation for this, but more recently I have been doing more spiritual work and growth, as well as trying to stick to scientific ideas such as biblical quantum physics theory, etc. Focusing on research and this memory resurfacing prompted me to share it. It's not the first time I've recalled this happening, but it's the first time I felt like I could maybe get some explanation. Aliens? Interdimensional beings? Otherwise? I'd be happy to provide any more context about this if it could be helpful. Maybe more information I remember about the encounters. If I can remember, well, thanks. Hello everyone. Good night, I suppose. I live in Germany now, but the report took place in southern Brazil, in the state of Paraná, in 2021. A brief summary of how I ended up in this situation. In 2020 I had discovered cancer, so I had surgery, chemo, etc. for a few months. I finished treatment in 2021. I was in a bath and felt something strange. The surgery site had ruptured after about 5 months and was oozing pus and blood. I disappeared. My father owns a quarry with an open mine. It's about 120 meters in diameter and around 20 meters deep. It is in this place, far from the city, about 8 kilometers in the middle of the woods and with some family farms nearby. Well, I loved the place and decided to go there from time to time to think about what to do. I was afraid to restart the treatment, afraid that maybe the cancer would come back with a vengeance. I parked my truck there and lay on top of it, watched shooting stars. I didn't know exactly how many hours later, but it should have been something like midnight, when suddenly I hear footsteps slowly coming towards me. I was armed with a pistol, but I left it inside my truck and I was not able to get to it quickly. All I had was a piece of wood that was lying in the trunk with me. At that time, I was afraid that it was a criminal, maybe someone like a thief, as we had problems with people stealing machine parts and the likes, but the sim came right from the side of a cliff. It was impossible for anyone to walk up. I even went back to check later. My second thought that it was maybe a jaguar, because I'd been lying down for a long time. Whether I was facing a jaguar or a criminal, they may have thought that I had fallen asleep. As the steps got closer, I deduced that they were already on my side. I looked without moving my head and I didn't see anything that was the height of a person. So I jumped with the piece of wood and screamed because it just had to be an animal. Then I saw something I had never seen before. It gave me goosebumps. Just writing about it now brings them back. It was a human figure, completely dark brown. It had no eyes, no mouth, no ears. It looked like thick smoke. It walked very clumsily, as if twisting. When I jumped, it still hadn't vanished, and it just froze. It then returned to the climb. It passed by my side about a meter away, and when I jumped up and screamed, it did absolutely nothing. It just passed by me, followed the opposite path I took to get there, left the road and entered the forest. In that time, I managed to get into my car and grab the gun. I walked for a while and suddenly came out into the clear and started coming towards me. The night was very clear with an almost full moon. When it got a safe distance from me, I started shooting. I shot about 10 times. I remember that I still had 12 rounds because when I arrived I fired a few shots. I landed all the shots as it approached. It didn't do anything. It didn't seem to hit anything. At the distance that I was at, I never missed. But he stopped. It turned around and went back to the bush. The rest of the night, it walked in a semicircle around 50 meters from me into the woods, and out into the clear and then into the woods on the other side. When dawn began to break, he entered the forest and I could hear the footsteps in the distance. This place I grew up in, I know every inch of it. I'm 32 years old. My childhood and youth was spent walking around going into this forest, and I've never met or seen anything like it before. When I asked my father, he just said that it wasn't good to go there alone at night because there's something strange there. He came the other day early because they were looking for me because I had left without warning and left my cell phone at home. He figured that I had gotten there. Does anyone know what this shadow figure could be? What this cloud of smoke wanted, maybe? Well, thanks for listening. I'm not sure if I used the correct flair for this. My 11-year-old grandson, who is not known to lie, was at the bus stop waiting to go to school last week. I was on the phone with him and I heard him gasp and I asked what was wrong. I assumed a stray or someone's dog because people don't keep their dogs on or in check here, unfortunately. He said he saw a tall dark figure run into the woods. Then his bus came and he said he had to go. I questioned him when he got home and he said the figure was abnormally tall, taller than anyone he had ever seen, very thin and wearing all black. He said it had no face that he could tell and the face area was all black too. I asked him if he was scared and he said that it didn't scare him but gave him a shock as it wasn't anything he'd ever seen before. I let it go and didn't bring it up again for fear of scaring him. Does anyone have any ideas as to what it could have been? We live in the country, so now I'm a little nervous myself. Edit. Thank you everyone for sharing your stories and giving me feedback. I think shadow figure might be the best description so far. Yes, I wish he had thought fast enough to snap a picture, but he said it moved unusually fast and then disappeared. My wife and I live in a middle-sized city in a fairly populated area in Pennsylvania, just off a very busy main road. This happened around June or July in 2022. We mostly live around older people and college students. Rent is very cheap and it's not the nicest neighborhood. My wife's job is about a 5-minute walk from our apartment and she was getting home very late that night, around 1:30 a.m. She came in looking scared to death and eventually told me what she saw. She said there was a small humanoid running out from between ours and our neighbor's house. It was dressed like and had the proportions of approximately a 4-year-old child. It wore a striped shirt and pants. She said it stopped and appeared to be a boy. It looked in her direction briefly before running off between another house. The child appeared to have a potato sack or burlap sack over its head. It was possibly drawn on. She's a major vibes person, but she has never said anything like this before, though she has excellent instincts. She didn't get a sense that it was evil, but she was still terrified after seeing it. If I bring up the child, she gets freaked out again and won't talk about it. No small children live in our street, and there are regular gunshots and screaming and angry homeless people that we are very accustomed to after 3 years living here. In short, it's not a place that an approximately 4-year-old child would be alone at 1:30 in the morning. She also did not tell me what happened right away. She appeared scared, but talked about work, unrelated things before telling me all of this. I think she thought I would judge her for telling me that she had seen something. Maybe she would think that I would think she was lying. It never happened again, and I have never seen or felt anything. If anyone has any theories, I would love to know. It freaked me out to think about, especially because that house he ran from is owned by a bachelor and has an enclosed gated backyard. Hi. So, for some reason when people start to get close to me, such as my friends, they start seeing things and hearing shit months later. It's always been like that. My boyfriend of 7 months doesn't believe in any kind of supernatural ghosts, demons or anything. We were walking down a long canal in daylight when he stopped suddenly after feeling something following him. Apparently, when he turned around, he saw a glimpse of a black shadowed figure disappear instantly. A few hours later, when I get home, he's in the shower, and in the mirror apparently he saw something behind him. A bright white face with red eyes, red mouth staring down at him. He obviously fucking went mental. He told me he got a vile and disgusting, sickening feeling about it. I don't think he'd lie to me about this, but he is a hard science guy and he mocks people who believe in this stuff. So, I believe it was a demon, and if so, which one? And why do people close to me always get it attached to them? Honestly, not sure what to call this post or if it even belongs here, because I'm not sure what I encountered. Also, sorry for my formatting or spelling. This is done on my phone and the autocorrect function is pretty shit. As I already said, I'm not sure what to call this thing. All I know is that it's nowhere near human. If I remember correctly, my first encounter with it was when I was around 10 or 12. I'm turning 20 in 4 days. It's all fuzzy. What I do remember is that at that time, I was in the state of California and I was playing hide and seek outside with a few of my friends. For privacy's sake, we'll call them Ray and Finn. It was already pretty late, I'd say around 6:47 p.m. It was in autumn, so the sun was practically gone by this time. It was Ray's turn to seek. Me and Finn decided to run off together since we didn't really like the dark all that much, and phones with lights were still pretty expensive, so none of us had one. Only thing we had was one of those old shake lights that you have to shake it to charge. Anyways, it had been about 10 minutes since the round had started. Ray got close, but never close enough to find us. It was quite funny for a bit until me and Finn heard it. It sounded like a low growl, kind of like a wolf, but deeper and more messed up. Kind of like it was underwater. I remember when we heard it, we both yelled and ran to Ray. Ray was shocked and commented about finally finding us and wondered why we looked so scared. At that moment, Finn and I were pretty scared and shaken up that we just wanted to get out of there. We kind of looked at each other in silence, then grabbed Ray by the shoulder in an attempt to guide him out, not daring to look back. And honestly, the only reason I didn't look back was because I swore I could hear it following us. We barely got any sleep that night, especially when the house was old, and it just wouldn't stop making those creepy house sounds that you always hear at the worst times possible. I believe it was around 6:30 a.m. when I decided to try to get some sleep again. I went to wash my face off in the bathroom, and I shit you not, while washing my face, I bloody saw it behind me. The only details I could get in that moment before I freaked out is that it had blood-red eyes and its body was pure black. At that point, I knew damn well it wasn't going to be something I could go to sleep after. So I turned on the TV and just watched some cartoons for the rest of the day, trying to keep whatever it was I saw out of my head. Fast forward a week and we kind of forgotten about it, and we went out into the forest to play games once more. This time we were out until 7 or 7:25 p.m. I was at this time, so I just held the shake light close, making sure to keep it charged as I wandered around looking for Ray and Finn. But instead of finding them, I found it instead. Whatever the hell it is. Because of how dark it was, how black its body was, I could barely make out any features. It didn't help that it was looming over a dead deer, eating at the carcass. It didn't even care that it was eating the bones as well. What I could make out with the light, and because of the blood, it had a reptilian-like jaw, not like a snake or a lizard, honestly, but more like what you would see on a Komodo dragon. Yet its teeth and the amount of them were just terrifying. I was frozen with fear for a bit, but when it realized I was there, I dropped the light and ran for my damn life, yelling for Ray and Finn to get out as well. I thought it was following me, but it was just Ray and Finn catching up to me. As we all ran inside, they tried to ask me what had happened, but honestly, I was too scared to even talk. I just hugged them both, glad that they made it out and that we got far away from that thing. I didn't get much sleep that night as well, honestly. I'm surprised I got any sleep at all, but now I regret even laying down that night, since when I woke up, I was in a paralysis state, unable to move and struggling to breathe. Whatever I saw in the forest was at the foot of my bed, crouching down just to fit into my room, so it had to be at least 8 feet tall, if not taller. The morning light kinda revealed that I was correct about the Komodo dragon face. Well, a Komodo mixed with a bit of a wolf. I could kind of hear something dripping as it slowly inched up onto my bed. I was scared and completely immobile. It got right above my face, its mouth slightly open like it was going to eat me. It just sat there, like that for what felt like an eternity. But suddenly it lunged and I finally broke free and yelled. After seconds of yelling, I realized I was still alive and that my mother had come to check on me. Seeing how scared I was, she ran over to make sure I was okay. All I could do was sit there shaking out of terror, and the only sign it had even happened was a footprint on my bedsheets. It was kind of black, like ink, but was quickly disappearing. From that day, it just kept getting worse. I had horrific night terrors constantly, had sleep paralysis where I would see it take many forms. Fast forward, half a year later, I hit my breaking point. Ray, Finn and I were having a sleepover at my house, just playing Minecraft since it was still new and we loved building games. It was around 4:54 and dinner had just gotten done when we bloody heard it. A loud thud on the roof that slowly became scratching as low demonic-like sounds followed the scratching. At this point, my dad has had enough and grabbed 2 guns, asking Finn to follow since he was the oldest out of us 3, 15 at the time, almost 16. They went outside to see whatever the hell it was for themselves, if they could kill it once and for all. It kinda started to rain, but when they went outside, Ray and I were not allowed to follow, as my father didn't want it to be able to lunge down and take us. But as a minute turned into almost 20, slowly hearing them get louder and louder, practically yelling at whatever it was, I was about to open the door when Ray pulled me away, and I heard 2 gunshots, then 3 more. My dad was screaming. After a moment, he ran inside, slamming the door, locking it, breathing heavily. Finn was nowhere to be seen, and we kind of thought of the worst since Dad did kind of have a bit of blood on him. His leg was broken and the bone was showing. It almost made me puke on the spot. Dad is fine now, but for Finn, we were right to think the worst. Because I recently learned that, yeah, Finn did indeed die that day. They have yet to find his body, and my dad has just not been the same. I had to say bye to Ray, since Dad just couldn't handle being in that house anymore. So we moved all the way to Washington as soon as we could. We have been here since, but I think it followed us. On my late night walks, I can sometimes hear something following me, and my dad just doesn't want me to talk about it. The only details I have gathered from my dad about this creature is that it's 9 feet tall. It has bat-like wings. It has a wolf dragon-like head, and its body was dripping like tar, and it had spikes that ran down its back. It's hard to talk to Dad about any of the other details, as he just gets drunk all the time now. I don't know what to think. I don't know how to feel. I know I'm scared, and I don't want anyone to die again. I don't want to move once again, and I don't really want to see it again.